everybody, it's Big Terp. Welcome back to Buddy's Spirits and Cigars. Today's episode will be a little bit different. It'll be just me going over a few things, trying to answer some questions from some of you guys that ask of us about cigars. So anyway, without further ado, we'll get right into answering some of those questions. All right, so we had some questions asked to us about different ring gauge sizes of cigars versus the length of a cigar and how that affects some of the flavors. Also about the different cuts that we use on cigars. So there's several different ways to do this, and really it's just something you have to figure out, trial and error. Figure out what works best for you. Some cigars are loosely on the inside, so they may actually have a little more draw. You may be able to draw through the cigar a lot easier versus one that's wrapped really tight. So on a cigar, the composure of a cigar has to do with there is a filler, there is a binder that goes around that filler, and then you have whatever wrapper on the outside of that. This one happens to be a barber pole, so you can kind of see it has a dark wrapper and a light wrapper wrapped around like a barber pole. Okay, so this one is a short story here, and the good thing about that is, let's say you had a long hard day at work and you decided, hey, I want to have a cigar and just kind of relax, just 30-45 minutes. Just need some time to just kind of wind down. Doing something like this, this is actually between the lines is what it's called, but it's the size, almost the size of a short story. But anyway, something this size here would be good as far as a quick smoke, less than an hour, definitely for sure. Now, as far as a cut would go on that, we have this as a punch. So when you push that in, it'll actually, you put that up to the cap of the cigar, and then you twist and push in, and it'll cut just a circle out on that cigar. So you want to use something like that. There are things called dessert cigars. So a dessert cigar may have like a sweet cap on it. It'll have some kind of sugary taste, something like that. And you want to preserve as much of the cap of that cigar as possible. So a lot of people will do a punch. There's different size punches as well. You can see on some of this is a table lighter, so it'll have a couple of different sizes of punches. So you actually have a larger one and a smaller one. And depending on the cigar, if it draws loose or if it's real tight, it might depend on what size punch you want to use. Another cut is what's called a guillotine. So we take that and then we place the cigar in between there, and it cuts just a straight cut off of the cap. That would be if you had a real tightly wound cigar. There's several out there that would be a good cut for. And then my personal favorite cut, this is a V cut. So what it does is it kind of creates a V, it cuts a V inside the cap of the cigar. It's kind of like a medium draw, if you will. So it doesn't open it up enough that it's like a guillotine, but it's a little bit more than a punch. So it's kind of a middle of the road. That's just one of my favorite cuts. I can just almost do a V cut on any cigar. Now we'll kind of move into, you can see where this cigar is a little bit longer. So the ring gauge is pretty comparable though. So that would be a smoke that would last just a little bit longer than your between the lines here. And then we get to this big dude. So this one has a very large ring gauge. This one, and part of the differences on the ring gauges and wrappers and stuff like that is usually the larger the ring gauge that the cigar is, the more you're going to taste the filler that's inside the cigar. And with premium cigars, most all premium cigars are handmade, and they have a long filler in there. So your ashes are going to be they're going to be composed. They're not going to just fall off in your lap most of the time. Also, as far as heat goes, smoking a cigar, usually the smaller the ring gauge, the hotter the cigar burns. And the smaller the ring gauge, the more of the wrapper you're going to taste. So it really depends on what you're looking for in a cigar as to what's going to work for you. Now, depending on the wrapper and actually the filler inside the cigar, you're going to have some cigars are going to be smoother than others. You're going to have some that has a little more spice to it, some that may taste a little more chocolatey, cocoa, coffee, stuff like that. It really just depends on what you're looking for. And for something like that, there's so many cigars out there, it's really hard to tell you about every cigar. These are all from Arturo Fuente. You can see some of them are Opus X, and some of these are pretty rare, hard to get. This is an original release Purple Rain. It's the size of Arturo Fuente 888. And so you can see on this particular one, it kind of goes down into like a torpedo head. So on something like this, a guillotine would work great. Even a V-cut, I wouldn't recommend doing a punch just because of the way the cap is on this. It's going to be very difficult to do something like that. So cutting that off with a guillotine or a V-cut is going to be the way to go. And then as far as how far down do you cut the cap off? And I'll see people sometimes that they'll just take, a very large portion, and they'll do a half to 3/4 of an inch of a cap. And that's just way too much. And the reason it's too much is you can see, once you look at a cigar and you get up close, you can see where the cap is put on. And so the reason that cap is put on is, like I told you, these were hand rolled. So they roll this tobacco, they roll this cigar, and then they will put a cap on there, and that keeps the tobacco leaves from unwinding on the cigar. So if you cut too much of that cap off and cut it way down too far, you're actually losing a lot of tobacco, but you're also creating another problem for you. It's going to start coming unwound. So you don't want the tobacco to come unwound. Now, like something like this is a Lancero. So this size of cigar here, it's just kind of got a little fancy wrap on the cap there. But anyway, this size of cigar, you're going to taste a lot of the wrapper on this. And then you're also it's going to be a little bit hotter for smoke. So you're going to feel some of that heat as you draw off of the cigar. Now, not necessarily when it's down here at the bottom, but as you start getting midway through the cigar, you're going to notice that it's going to start to heat up a little bit. But it's a really good cigar. I'm a huge fan of Lanceros. It's just got to be something you have time for, and if you're wanting to taste a lot of the wrapper. Now, Lanceros are kind of a more rare size. They're not readily available at most shops. I also encourage you to shop local. Definitely shop local if you have a good cigar shop in your local area. Support everybody that's local. This one is a double Corona size. So it's a little bit larger as far as the ring gauge than the Lancero, but it's pretty similar in length. So you're going to get some of the wrapper taste on this as well, but you're going to get a little bit more of the composure of the inside. You're going to get some of that, the filler that's in there. This one also is going to take a pretty good long smoke. It's probably, I don't know, somewhere around 1.5 hours, 2 hours. It kind of depends on how fast you smoke a cigar. Cigars are something that a lot of people, they tend to just want to relax and enjoy their cigar, so it's not something that you're necessarily in a hurry to smoke. So on the cigars, as far as the size and the length and the size and the ring gauge, it really depends on the amount of time you have and also the company you're with. So if you want to enjoy your company longer, you want to be there and be engaged, you may pick something that's a little longer and a larger ring gauge. If it's something you just want to stop by, hang out for 30, 40 minutes after work and then get home and enjoy some time with the wife and kids or whatever you have to do, then you may want to go with something along the size of this between the lines. So there's a range from all different sizes, and there are some that are just, they even do crazy shapes just to show off various things within that company. Some of them are just kind of a showpiece. Most of them are for you to smoke. So I hope this answered some of your questions as far as different sizes of cigars with ring gauge, different lengths of cigars, and about what you're going to kind of taste with them being the size that they are. We definitely appreciate the support. Thank you for following and engaging with us and asking questions. Keep them coming, and we'll do our best to create stuff to answer your questions to the best of our ability. Guess we'll see you on the next one.